If Atlantis was Antarctica, and they had such a high level of civilization.
The story of Atlantis will always be one of my favorite subjects to talk about because someone decided to pluck it out of relative obscurity and directly out of its original context, its original importance, and made it something larger than life, almost mythological. And really, it's so much bigger than what Plato, I think, originally intended for that story to be. He was basically saying it as a warning, like to the Athenian people of his time, that if you value arrogance and objects, money, more than you respect the gods, then the gods will do to you or to the Athenian people or to Athens what they did to the Atlanteans. And that's really, I think, all he meant by that story. But today it's so much bigger than that. And I think why people feel the need for Atlantis to have been real at some point is because it helps to explain the seemingly unexplainable. And like the speaker in this video is saying, we have no idea how the Egyptians moved the stones to build the Pyramid of Giza. And that's not entirely true. We have some really good theories. We don't know exactly how it was done, but we do have some very, very good theories about how it could have been done. A 1996 paper at the University of Pennsylvania talks about how the generally accepted theory is that the ancient Egyptians dragged the blocks on sledges over causeways made of either slacked lime or taphla, which is a local clay. The remains of causeways constructed of taphla have been found all over the Giza Plateau. And there are other hypotheses out there that has shown through experimental archaeology that 6 men could lift and move a 5,000-pound block of stone. It's entirely possible. Any one of these theories could have been used, and just because we can't pick one to say, oh yes, this absolutely happened, doesn't mean that it wasn't used. What happens is when people start saying that it was Atlantis, it's akin to saying that it was aliens, and we start taking away from the accomplishments of our ancestors, of our history, of the people who actually lived in those societies, and that's where people start having a really big issue. When we can't explain something historically that happened or possibly happened, we can't just start attributing it to Atlanteans, technologically advanced Atlanteans, or aliens, or time traveling Atlanteans. We have to stop and think and just say, hey, maybe we just don't have all this information right now. Maybe our archaeological understanding or our historical understanding of what was going on at the time isn't complete. And there's a lot of history that it just isn't complete. We are putting pieces together from thousands and thousands, tens of thousands of years ago, some hundreds of thousands of years ago. And we're just never going to have the whole picture, but we can do the best that we can do to fully understand that and to just continuously attribute these accomplishments and these things that we just can't explain to another group of people like aliens or again Atlanteans, then it just takes so much away from our own history. At the very beginning of his video, the speaker says that he believes that Atlantis is in Antarctica. And if you actually read Plato's Republic, where the Timaeus and Critias are, where it talks about Atlantis, Plato gives a pretty good picture of where Atlantis is supposed to be, according to him who created the story of Atlantis. First, in the Timaeus, he says, our records tell us of a proud and mighty power, which your city once arrested as it poured itself all over Europe and Asia from its base in the Atlantic Ocean. In those faraway days, that ocean could be navigated as there was an island outside the channel, which your countrymen tell me you call the Pillars of Heracles. This island was larger than Libya and Asia together, and from it seafarers in those times could make their way to the others and thence to the whole of the opposite continent, which encircles the true outer ocean. In this Atlantic island had arisen a great and wonderful monarchy. And then in the Critias, he goes on to say, their king, the eldest, received a name from which the ocean, as well as the whole island, got its designation. It is called Atlantic because the name of the first king of old times was Atlas. His younger twin brother, to whose share fell the extremity of the island off the Pillars of Heracles, fronting the region now known as Gadira. And Gadira is, today in Spain, it's called Cadiz, and it's just on the west coast. Right there. There's Cadiz, the Strait of Gibraltar, which was called the Pillars of Heracles back in the day. And so right outside of the strait and off the coast of Cadiz would have been where Plato's Atlantis would have been. And as far as Atlantis being this wondrous, technologically advanced city, Plato doesn't really say that. Plato, through Critias, goes on to talk about how the Atlanteans had really fertile soil for growing food and timber, and they were able to build mines and quarries to quarry stone. And he also talks about their specific army makeup. He says each leader was then enjoined to furnish the army with the following contribution: 1/6 part of a war chariot, up to the full complement of 10,000 such chariots, 2 chargers with their riders, a pair of horses without car but supplied with a dragoon with light shield and a driver for the pair to stand behind the combatant, 2 hoplites, a pair of archers and the same number of slingers, 3 light-armed throwers of stone and the same number of javelin men, 4 marines, up to the full complement of 1,200 ships. In Plato's writing, there's nothing technologically different about what the Atlanteans have against the rest of the Mediterranean world at the time. Everything was relatively the same. And you have to remember that in Plato's story of Atlantis, the Athenians fought against the Atlanteans. They came into the Mediterranean Sea and they enslaved the Libyans and the Egyptians, and they were coming for the Athenians, and the Athenians rose an army with the other Hellenes and they fought them back and freed the Egyptians and the Libyans. So if there was some technology that the Atlanteans had at the time, Plato would have written about it. But if you put Atlantis back in its place contextually and you see what was happening during the time Plato was alive and writing politically and socially in Athens, you'll see that he was truly writing a warning to Athenian leaders saying, if you value opulence and arrogance and wealth more than you value the gods, then the gods will do this to you. They will strike you down. I mean, this was during the time that Sparta had conquered and occupied Athens, right? This was when democracy had been run out of Athens and then eventually put back in place. And these people were trying to survive and live and thrive. But that was the warning. Athena had given them a warning. And now Plato is writing about it saying, listen to what is being told to you because we are on the verge of being another Atlantis. We are always going to have gaps in our understanding of the archaeological and historical record. That's just the nature of the beast, unfortunately. But when we start attributing the accomplishments of our ancestors to Atlanteans or to time travelers or to aliens, then we start doing a huge, huge disservice, not just to ourselves, but to our understanding of history in general. And we hurt a lot more than we help. That's it, really. Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Bye. As always, here are my sources. Again, I'm not a practicing or professional archaeologist. I just have bachelor's degrees in archaeology and classics, and I love to talk about this stuff when I can. So thanks for watching again, and I hope you enjoyed.